So let's start. Good morning again. My name is Alessandro. I am from Qumulo. This is our agenda for today. This is a webinar. You are on mute, but we encourage you to use the Q&A button below in order to ask questions. We will try to answer to them in real time if possible, or otherwise towards the end of the webinar. We will have a questions and Q&A session. So without further ado, let's start. Who am I? I'm working for Qumulo. I'm a senior system engineer. I work on the Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish markets. But more interestingly, before working for Qumulo, I was the IT manager for two hospitals in Italy. These two hospitals are a little bit peculiar because both of them, they had also a research institution attached to them. So I had to solve problems in terms of data management related to hospitals and to my research institution, which is a kind of an interesting problem to solve. Because if you, in your hospital, you do have researchers, you know that they always want to push the limits of the technologies, and they use funny instruments that produce huge amounts of data. And this is us. We are Qumulo. We are a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for the last 4 years. And amongst the leader, if we see this line, we are the most visionaries. What means this? This means that we are bringing innovation into the space. Don't forget that we have more than 40 players in this space, but we are the most visionaries, meaning that we are bringing true innovation in the distributed file systems and object stores. We have a worldwide presence. We have more than 700 customers all over the world, and we are now managing for those customers more than 2 exabytes of data. That's a lot. And of course, a lot of that data is produced exactly in hospitals and research institutions. So who is Qumulo? Why we were invented, basically? If we take a look at this slide on the left, we see that the so-called legacy storage solution were invented more than 20 years ago, meaning that their architecture and technology were not ready for a number of things. First, the tremendous growth of data that we are seeing, because the unstructured data, so the files, are growing at a tremendous pace. And you see that on a daily basis in your organizations, in your hospitals. And typically, those architecture from the past have some limitations in terms of architecture. Why? Because basically, in order to sustain this kind of growth, you need to use an architecture that is able to scale linearly and effectively in the 2 dimensions, in the space dimension and in the performance dimension. Those architectures were typically dual controller architecture, so scale up architectures, where you can attach more disks or more JBods, and you are limited by the controllers. So you can reach a certain throughput, but if you want to scale over a certain amount, then you need to lift and shift. You need to replace everything and buy something else. We were born for a different mission. We are a scale-out technology, means that we grow linearly by using building blocks, and we can grow basically with no limit in both space and performance. We were born also to solve another problem that we are seeing in healthcare, but not only in healthcare, which is the explosive growth in terms of files that our customers are managing. For example, not related to healthcare, but related to another vertical, we have a customer that on their Qumulo cluster, they have more than 30 billions of files. What does that mean? This means that Qumulo allows you to basically do not worry anymore about how many files and about the size of those files that you can have on your system. You have no limits, practical limits. We don't do tree walks. Tree walks are that operation that are used when you, for example, try to enumerate a directory with, let's say, 1 million files. That usually requires a waiting time on legacy architectures. With us, you get all the files enumerated immediately. This enormously increases the efficiency of the application, but also the user experience. We allow you for data visibility. We allow you to see in real time what your PAC systems are doing with regard to the file system, what files are touching, reading, writing, and so on. We are unique with this regard. And we are born for the cloud. So Qumulo can run on premise, but it can run also natively in the cloud. And we can run on multiple hardware of your choice. We currently run on HPE, we run on Fujitsu, we run on Supermicro, and we run also on our own appliances. This is the ecosystem. Basically, as I said before, Qumulo can run on premise, and this is a typical architecture for a hospital where we have one physical cluster on premise that replicates data to a secondary data center for backup and disaster recovery. Or we can also do disaster recovery in the cloud, and you can choose AWS, Azure, or GCP. And here on the left, we see this green line, which says S3, because Qumulo can copy data from Qumulo to an S3 target, being it AWS or another S3 target, and copy the data back. So we can mobilize data, and the other arrows that you see are native Qumulo replicas. So basically, you can mobilize data when it's most convenient for you. So what happened in my previous life at my hospitals? When I joined that organization, those hospitals, I started as an help desk technician, okay? So helping doctors, helping researchers. And after 7 years, I ended up being the head of IT. What happened in those 7 years? A lot of things. Technology advances increased the quantity of data that I had to manage. For example, let's talk about X-ray. We started with 2D, few megabytes per image. Then we had 3D, hundreds of megabytes per image, 4D, gigabytes per images, and HD, multiple gigabytes per images. So the technology's increase in terms of the instruments that are used at your hospitals will always push the limits of any storage technology, because doctors and researchers want to have better, faster, and more efficient instruments to provide a better diagnosis and treatment for patients. And scientists, of course, they want top of the notch instruments to be able to deliver research papers and be relevant in the scientific community. Same thing happened for digital pathology. We are now using whole slide images. Each image is 1.5 gig multiplied per minimum of 10 slides, and that's it. And the same thing for DNA sequencing. When I started working, a DNA sequencer was as big as a room, and doing one experiment was costing 10,000, 20,000 euros, and it took 1 week. Now a DNA sequencer is the size of a small printer. The cost of experiments has been reduced, and you can do a full analysis of a DNA of a genome in basically 1 day. That means that in those years, I had to face the explosion of data, and that was a challenge because I was using a legacy approach to that. So I started adding drives to my existing storage system. So I used HDDs for some kind of workloads. Then I used some SSDs for other kind of workloads, maybe a mix of the two for other workloads. What was the result after a few years? We created storage silos to manage, one for the digital pathology, one for the cell profiling, one for the PAC system, where we are focused now, one for the high throughput microscope in use in my labs, and one for the genomic analysis, and so on. And all those different silos are a management point, are complex and hard to manage. They don't scale indefinitely. And so sometimes I had also to replace them. And even worse, sometimes it was not the IT deciding what kind of storage was to be purchased, because maybe the storage was bundled with the instrument. So it was a little bit of a problem, right? So what will be the solution to this kind of fragmentation and management, let's say, inefficiency? The solution will be a unified architecture like Qumulo has. We create, and we see this slide from the right to the left. On the right, we have a Qumulo cluster. What is a Qumulo cluster? Basically, we begin with 4 building blocks. These are servers, which have their SSDs and HDDs. They run M2 network interface cards that connect to standard switches at 25, 40, 100 gigs. 4 nodes create a Qumulo cluster. And that Qumulo cluster can provide you with the following protocols: NFS, SMB, FTP, and REST API. So we are focused 100% on file. We do not do block. On the left, we find the typical workloads that hospitals are using with Qumulo: digital pathology images, genomic sequencing, PACS and VNA, and also home directories for doctors and for researchers. When it's time to grow, because probably we had a new instrument in our hospital, or we have a new instrument for our researchers, what we do is simply, we add another building block, and when we do this, in 60 seconds, we are expanding the space, but also we are increasing the performance. So we grow linearly in a very predictive way in the both dimensions. So the idea is to put more workloads and consolidate those workloads on the Qumulo. So you don't have to manage multiple systems, because you know that with Qumulo, you can grow linearly. You will never hit a bottleneck. You will never hit a limit. So typically for the healthcare, we can be used for PACS and VNA and diagnostic images in general. We can be used for research computing, because we see that more and more hospitals do have some form of collaboration with scientific institutions, and they do have many times researchers internally. Of course, life sciences, this is a part of the future of healthcare. More and more we are using genomic analysis in order to profile our patients and provide them with a better diagnosis and treatments, and enterprise file, which is home directories. So let's take a closer look at the Qumulo architecture. On the upper right, we have the operating system that we are able to work with. So Linux, Windows, and Mac, basically all the operating system that your doctors and scientists can use. Those users use one of the protocols that we speak, and then what they do when they write something, they write data directly on SSDs, meaning that your PACS application, your scientific computations, your heavy imaging processing applications will always work against the SSDs. So they will have a flash-like experience, and we will see later why this is relevant for you. Then automatically, we tie the data between the SSDs and the HDDs. There is nothing to do. You don't have to write complex policies for doing data movement, nothing. We take care of this automatically. We have patents on these technologies because this is extremely efficient. How efficient is this? This is a telemetry from all the Qumulo clusters of our customers, because we proactively monitor your Qumulo cluster in order to verify that it's in a good health and so on. We collect telemetry data, and we have aggregated this telemetry data. If we sum those blue bars, we will see that more than 90% of the reads are performed from RAM or SSD. This means that your doctors will be able to retrieve PACS images extremely fast, and every kind of application that is working with huge sequences of images, being them PACS, VNA, or digital pathology, will benefit from this technology. And it's not my own words. This is Fujifilm. We know that Fuji is one of the biggest PACS vendors in the world. And when they certified Qumulo with their PACS system, they had these words for us. And they said, we have not seen a system this efficient before. Qumulo intelligently manages the tiering of data inside of the file system, reducing the complexity and the cost of the system. So don't take my words for granted, just take them word for granted. And these guys, they certify storage system every day of their lives. It's their job, basically. But another characteristic of Qumulo, that we work well under pressure, and we allow you to use up to 100% of the space that you will purchase. This is a telemetry data from one of our customers. If we see on the left, the cluster is full, more or less 98%. And if we take a look at the graphs, those are days. So we are providing that level of performance sustained over days, even if the cluster is full at 98%. What means this? This means that you have an operational tranquility, that first, you can use that extra 20% of space that other vendors tell you, oh no, please don't go over 80% because you know that the system will perform slower and so on. We don't say that. We say to you, feel free to use all of your space because we will not suffer. We are engineered in order to allow you to get that 20% space back and to be able to sustain even very heavy workloads. This is another telemetry data taken from one of our customers. As I said, we were engineered to be able to allow you to put basically any number of files that you want on your Qumulo storage. This customer had in 2019 more or less 16 billions of files and more or less 800 millions of directories. So forget about the problems about inodes, forget about the constraints that legacy architectures force you into. This customer now has more or less 30 billions of files on their file system. And also, we can accommodate files of any size. We have customers in oil and gas. They are using single files that are 30 terabytes each. We have no limit. If you have 1 petabyte Qumulo cluster, if you want, you can create one file, 1 petabyte, no problem at all. We are future-proof with this regard. These are the PACS vendor we work for. Basically all of them, all of the major PACS vendor, but we are compatible to any PACS solution that can mount an SMB share or an NFS export. And this is a typical architecture of a PACS system. I have highlighted here in the red box what is usually an expensive cache, which is the first tier, let's call that, of storage that is used by the PACS. This is expensive because sometimes it is a full flash, but we can optimize this. How? If we recall from the previous slide, we have seen that with our architecture, all the applications and users are writing data directly on SSDs. So what we can do is to optimize this architecture and remove that expensive cache. By doing that, we are doing two things. First, we are saving some money. Second, we are reducing the number of storage systems that we have to manage. So basically, we are saving money and time. And of course, from the Qumulo pack system, we can replicate data to a secondary data center. So these are a few customers from all over the Europe and the US that are working with Qumulo and pack systems, basically of all sizes and all vendors. We can start small, 80 terabytes, but we can grow more than 25 petabytes, okay? So no constraints at all. And this is the telemetry data that we can provide you. Just imagine that this is your pack server that is working. We can show you in real time and just using the Qumulo web interface, so no special tool needed, in real time what the pack system is doing with regard to the file system. For example, we are seeing that this application server MQTSDB beta is working on these files. Why this is important? Well, it was relevant for me when we had the pack system slowing down. It was a nightmare to troubleshoot because storage was a black box, right? You have aggregated data, IOPS throughput, but that's globally and aggregated. You need more details. And Qumulo provides exactly this detail. With 3 clicks, you will be able to see exactly what your pack systems, your digital pathology systems, your applications, and your users are doing real time on the file system. This can be used for troubleshooting, optimization, or planning. Security, of course, data security in a hospital is of paramount importance for a number of reasons. First of all, physical security of the data. We have no single point of failure. We are extremely resilient. And for example, when a disk breaks down, we can rebuild a 14 terabyte HDD, which is one of the biggest drives, in 6 hours. Why? Because basically all the nodes in the Qumulo and all the drives in the Qumulo contribute to the reconstruction of the failed drive. That's why we are so fast. All the data on the Qumulo is encrypted at rest via software, and we are using AES 256 algorithm, which is one of the most secure. And when we provide you with the performance of the Qumulo cluster that you're looking to purchase, the numbers that we give you are already discounted of the encryption, so no bad surprises. Role-based access control. We can define profiles, usage profiles, and for example, many customers are allowing their application team to come into the Qumulo web interface and take a look at those analytics that I've just showed you in the slide. They cannot do nothing else. They cannot, let's say, create or modify shares and so on. They can just take a look at the analytics. And this is very helpful, especially, for example, if your pack system is in service and you want to provide to the organization that is providing you with the pack service visibility of what is happening at the file system level. Vulnerability scanning. We know vulnerabilities are out there. Every release of our software is tested with the Qualys Vulnerability Manager because we know how much critical it is to provide you with secure by default software that you can use to manage your storage. Another way to protect data is by using snapshots. With Qumulo, you can create up to 40,000 snapshots per cluster. It's a lot. It's more than twice that our closest competitor. We suggest you strongly to use those snapshots. You can take snapshot every minute, every 5 minutes, keep them for weeks, days, months, years, forever. or you can replicate them to another Qumulo cluster with a different retention time. For example, on the primary Qumulo cluster, you can take snapshots and keep them for, let's say, 6 months. But when you replicate those snapshots to the secondary Qumulo cluster that you use for backup of disaster recovery, you can say something, okay, on to the other side, please keep those snapshots for 3 years, 5 years, forever. And security, again, audit log. It's absolutely important to be aware of what is happening on the storage system. We provide you with a real-time auditing log in the standard syslog format. So basically, we send these logs in real time to any destination that can process and understand syslog logs. For example, Splunk, ELK, and other solutions. It's real time, there is no performance impact, and it tells you everything about who is accessing what file, with what protocol, from what workstation, with what user, and the result of the operation. So you can keep under control everything in real time. And of course, you can have the best product in the world, but this must be accompanied by an even better and excellent support. We don't have a typical support model. We eliminated the waste of time. We eliminated the inefficient processes of the escalations. Basically, as a Qumulo cluster customer, you will get access to a dedicated Slack channel. In that Slack channel, there are all our engineers, level 3, which are expert, which know about your cluster, which know about you and your workloads, and they will never make you waste time. They usually replies in a couple of minutes when you post a question. And of course, they are available, for example, if you want to make a configuration and just want to have a double check. We have a net promoter score of 91. This index measure how good has been rated the support for a vendor. And to give you an idea, if we take a look at this label on the right, this is an index that can be negative, okay? Let's compare ourselves to a very well-known guys which support is exceptional. During the pandemic, I had to work with Apple customer support, Amazon and Netflix because I'm their customers, and they were just amazing. They solved my problem in a matter of minutes. They have 72, 79, 68. We are at 91. And this is me, this is my experience. This is, of course, our technology. But please, today we have Kim from the Imelda Hospital. He's a customer of Qumulo, and you can hear from his live voice what has been his experience with Qumulo. Thank you, Kim. Stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kim, and I work for the Imelda Hospital for almost 22 years now. I am the system lead for the system networking and security group. And it's so nice that I can bring out my story about our Qumulos to the other hospital colleagues. So let's start. A year ago, our PAC system needed to be upgraded. We had an ACFA PAC system that run locally in 2 data rooms with an external connection for disaster recovery. It was a complex setup with multiple file servers. The classical storage, for us, it was an HP 3-par system with an external VNA that was going over a leased line to an external data center. All made by ACFA. ACFA told us how to set it up. They told us we needed a lot of tiers, expensive tiers to speed it up. But due to the necessary upgrade we needed to do, we started to question the entire setup. So please go to the next slide. I still got the shivers when I see the old setup. The old setup was very difficult to maintain. there were a lot of parts in the solution that could cause problems. When we needed to do firmware upgrades, we always had to check multiple vendors if it's compatible. Is it okay to upgrade the Windows? Is it okay to upgrade the drives? Everything needed to be checked. So it cost a lot of time and a lot of effort to upgrade those systems. Another problem was retrieving the older images from the VNA solution was extremely slow. The external leased line was only 100 megabits. So retrieving a lot of images, it took some time. So it needed to be planned when we needed those images, or we had to wait about 45 minutes. The cost per stored image was pretty high. So raising storage capacity was always quite a challenge, not in terms of technology, not always, but also in terms of budget. Expanding a 3PAR was not such an easy thing and not cheap. So we had to look for another solution. So we went to the market and we had some requirements for our new solution. Storage capacity needed to expand very easily. It must be done in a few days. When we made the solution, we need extra storage, just buy something and expansion should be done. The implementation of the new system should be easy, and the maintenance should be much, much easier than we were used to. I have a small team, so every minute that they are working on maintenance from a system, they can't work on other things. The complete setup must be less complex. So we wanted to drop out some vendors. We wanted to go to as less vendors needed in our solution. Very important was the failover. In case one CPU room drops out, we needed immediate failover to the second room. We can't have a hospital down for 2 or 3 minutes. So the performance must be better. That was also a demand of the users. The old images should be much faster retrievable. So that was also a demand. And our after sales support must be better, because we know we were used when we make a call with our 3PAR vendor. It took some hours before we had a solution sometimes. And the snapshot functionality for crypto loggers was also needed in that solution. After we had seen a lot of vendors and solution partners, I was convinced that Qumulo should be our next solution. So against all advices and comments like we don't support that system, performance will be on your own risk, we still went for it. And we've ended up with Qumulo. Now we have 3 Qumulo clusters, 2 in our main rooms, CPU room 1 that is mirrored to a CPU room 2. And for our data disaster recovery, we have a third cluster in a third room that's completely disconnected from the network, and only one server can put images on that Qumulo. So we dropped out expensive tiering. We just put one Qumulo cluster for all the images that's replicating. What was the benefit? It was extremely fast, extremely fast. Even the zip archive, users don't see any latency anymore when images are coming from the zip archive or the hot cache. It's all the same. It's extremely fast. The setup was super easy, and I really mean it. The clusters, I think it was 3 or 4 hours to set up the 3 complete clusters. We have a lot less maintenance at this moment. The only thing we do is upgrade the system, and that's it. There is nothing else. The systems run all by itself. We don't have to look at it, really. User experience, much, much better. Because of they're so fast that users are not complaining anymore about the latency or slow images. So when users are happy, sysadmins are happy too. The insights, wonderful. we got a lot more info and a lot more data than before. We can see what's happening with our PAC system, what's happening with our Qumulos. We can see when there is a lot of heavy traffic just by clicking the interface. And then the support, it's mind-blowing. They are much, much faster than any other vendor ever seen. We can drop a case at midnight. We can drop it in the morning. It doesn't matter. Within 5 minutes, we always got an answer, or a person that is helping us with any of the questions. So at this moment, the solution only delivers happy customers, but more important, only happy sysadmins for us. A lot of time came available for doing other stuff while we are running on the Qumulos. So it's a serious win for us. We took a huge guess because we're one of the first Qumulo customers for PACs in Belgium. But yeah, it was a good guess.
Perfect. So thank you, Kim, for your for basically telling us what happened, what was your experience with Qumulo. So we have a few questions in the Q&A. One for you is, you're using Qumulo for PACs, but do you have plans to use Qumulo for other needs?
Yeah, definitely. Probably next year we are going to move all our SMB shared data to new Qumulo clusters. Also the DNA sequencing of the labos, the digital pathology, and more images of our ophthalmologists are going to the Qumulo clusters next year. So definitely we are moving more and more data to the new solution.
Perfect. And another question that we have, someone is asking, how much time do you spend managing your Qumulo clusters?
Not a lot. We try to update our Qumulo clusters once a month with the latest version of the software. I think it takes about 15 minutes to upgrade all our systems, and that's it. The rest of the time, it just runs. We sometimes look at it, but it's always fine, so we don't have to do anything about it. We had one broken disk, but you guys saw it before we saw it, so.
Okay, perfect. We have Farhat, which is asking another question for you. And he said, could you please compare performance of Qumulo and the previous system in more detail?
Before the Qumulos, we had the tripars. On the tripar, there were SSD drives for our first hot images. There was a latency, I thought about sometimes about 100 milliseconds before all the images went. And I think we don't have any latency anymore above 30 milliseconds on the Qumulos. For the experience for the user, when you're scrolling through a CT scan from that has like 2000 images, they are now just scrolling and none of the images are stuck for a moment. So yeah, the right numbers, it's hard to tell from it's better in that or it's better on in the other way. It's just the experience, and the numbers we got now from the insights, they tell us that the latency is much lower than we had on the tripars.
Yeah, usually we hear this kind of thing from our other customers. They say, well, the performance increase, we measure that in the number of calls that we get from doctors. We went from a few calls a day to 0 calls per day. So usually that's a very good indicator. It's not
That's
technical,
correct.
but you know, it's an easier experience. And we have another question. Do you have any other PACS vendors on Qumulo than Agfa? So are you using other PACS vendors at the moment?
No, we only have the Agfa PACs. yeah, it's globally for the complete hospital. So no, we don't have other vendors.
Okay, perfect. Let me see if there are other questions. So there is another one which is asking about what has been for you the main benefit of adopting Qumulo.
The main benefit for now at this moment, I would say the time I got back to do other stuff. Yeah, the system just runs. That was, yeah, before the Qumulos, we had often a call from, can you look at the PAC system? Their slow images are not coming through from the VNA, something like that. But now we run on Qumulo and we don't get any calls anymore. So it's just running. We don't waste a lot of time with making calls to check if the firmware is compatible. We just download the update once a month from Qumulo. We put them on the Qumulos and 15 minutes later, everything's running again on the latest version. So that's for me the biggest gain I have made after implementing Qumulo.
Perfect. Thank you. And we have another question from Farhat. He is very interested in our technology. So thank you, Farhat. Do you use Slack as a channel for support from Qumulo? Yes.
Yes.
We do use Slack. Yeah, all the customers, they get their own dedicated Slack channel, and all our level 3 engineers are there. So it's a follow the sun model 24/7. There is someone that can answer to your questions. And another question, what do you think about using the cloud approach in healthcare in general? Because we have seen that we can run also in the cloud. So it's an interesting question. In my experience in Italy, we don't see many hospitals working in the cloud, but they're starting thinking about moving data into the cloud.
It's the same here. We are thinking about the cloud, but not for really critical data. Probably what we are going to start with is like something, the intranet, some document management system for the administrative guys, maybe the OneDrive, something like that, and the Exchange will go into the cloud. But I think it's only used the next year for disaster recovery. Probably we're going to put some data in it, or maybe some hot standby for if we had a major crash in inside the hospital. But really moving to the cloud, I don't think that's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay, perfect. So we have a question from Martin. Did Qumulo eliminate the need for a VNA entirely? Okay, Martin, just to clarify, we don't replace the PAC systems and the VNA. We are a storage system that can grow indefinitely. So yes, we will be very happy to host your VNA data, but you will still have the need to use a VNA, okay? We are not a PACS company, we are not a VNA company. Well, we can provide a place as big as you want and as fast as you've heard from Kim, when you can put your data and you can grow linearly. So we are happy to work with your VNA vendor. Okay, another question from Lewis. Does Qumulo have any NHS customer, UK public sector healthcare customers? Yes, we do have them. Actually, we have customers across all of Europe and in the US, and now we're expanding also in the Asia Pacific. Lewis, we have your details since you're registered. So I will have my colleague from the UK contacting you in order to discuss those customers, because some of them are not public, others are. So you can have a detailed conversation with my colleague that follows the UK. Are you happy with that, Lewis? I hope yes. Perfect. So any other questions? We have a number of them. We encourage you to keep asking, please. It's your time. We have more or less 10 minutes left. Any kind of question is welcome. Technical question, usability questions, Whatever you want, we are here for you. And let's wait for a couple of minutes. There are no embarrassing questions, by the way. I will be happy to answer all of them. And if I don't know the answer, simply we will get back to you within a day, okay? Are you using all Flash nodes only? This is for you, Kim.
No, we are not using all Flash nodes. We're just using the standard. They are having an SSD for the cache, but all the rest is just normal spinning disks. And the system is that I was afraid of the speed before it was implemented. I thought they are not going to make it with so less SSD space. I doubt they can gain the speed they promise, but their functionality of a SSD cache is working so well. It's amazing. It's just doing what they told us. Our magic in caching, like they told us, is just working. So no, we don't have all Flash. It's not needed.
Okay, thank you, Kim. But for to complement this, yes, we also do have full Flash and VME nodes. If you want, if you need super hyper high performance, yes, we can sell you those nodes. But typically for PACS, VNA, digital pathology, scientific images, you will be happy with hybrid systems. We really see all NVMe systems just in extremely demanding environments like high performance computing, where we have maybe thousands of cores running to run very complex simulations and so on. Could you please provide some experiences of customers using Qumulo combined on-premise with cloud? Yes, and thank you for that again. Of course, as Kim mentioned, they are thinking about using the cloud as a DR, as a disaster recovery. We have a number of customers that are doing exactly that. They have a Qumulo cluster on-premise. They have a second Qumulo cluster in the secondary data center, and they have a last resource copy, so a third copy running in the cloud. That will be the last resource copy, okay? But we have also customers that are doing some interesting things with Qumulo in the cloud. For example, we have some customers that are scientific labs that do genomic analysis. They run entirely in the cloud. They take data from the sequences, they upload them into the cloud, and they have the pipeline, the analysis of the pipeline of that data directly in the cloud. And they then, when the analyses are done, they distribute the data by providing access to different S3 buckets to their customers. Because don't forget that with Qumulo, you can copy data from the Qumulo in premise or in the cloud to S3 buckets to share that data with your customers. Another question, how can Qumulo support migration from existing storage systems? Thank you, Piotr. So we don't do direct migration projects, but we do have strong relationships with Tempo and with other vendors that are specialized in data migrations. Of course, if the migration is going to be simple, let's say simple, we can suggest you what will be the best way, but we cannot take responsibility for that. Usually we use a Tempo if we are talking about hundreds of terabytes of millions and millions or billions of files, okay? Because we work well with them. We've done many migration projects across the entire globe. And typically we see we can cut the migration time from months to weeks or even days. It depends. Another question, have you tested Qumulo before you put it in production?
Yes, of course. We didn't believe the numbers they gave us, so we asked for a POC. And after we had seen how much performance it gave us and how easy it was to set up, we were convinced. Yep. So we've tested it. Yep.
Perfect. Thankfully, someone still tests solutions before buying them. That's a good suggestion. Okay. Oh, and by the way, while we are talking about testing Qumulo, of course, we are software defined. So if you want to do a functional validation of Qumulo, we can help you to set up a virtual Qumulo cluster. It takes 1 hour. We can just download the OVA. They're available, okay? You can set up a Qumulo virtual cluster. Of course, we are not telling you to test the performance of Qumulo against a virtual Qumulo cluster, but the features, the functionality, and all that is the functional testing, yes, you can do that. And we call that virtual POC, okay? But of course, in the case of Kim, they wanted to see the performance from the actual years, and yes, of course, they did. So we have 6 more minutes for you to ask questions. By the way, thank you so far for all the questions. Very interesting one. As I said, feel free to ask anything. We are not scared about replying to you. So let's wait maybe 1 minute more, couple of minutes more. If there are no more questions, then we will give back some of your time. Don't be shy. Just ask. Okay, cool. I think that, oh, another question for Farah. Thank you. Which servers were used for Qumulo clusters? So Kim, in your experience, what servers are you using?
We are using the Qumulo dedicated hardware.
Perfect. But as I said, we can also run on HP Apollo 4200 nodes. We can run on Supermicro. We can run on Fujitsu, and we do have our own gears and appliances. The idea behind Qumulo is to add more and more OEM vendors. Since we are software defined, our idea is to run on different OEMs, but always doing co-engineering, meaning we always test together with the engineering of the OEM, HPE, Fujitsu, and so on, the Qumulo nodes, so we can guarantee you the performance. Okay, we don't do like other vendors do. Let's say, oh yes, you can take whatever server you want, put in whatever drives you want. No, it's not like that. We have certified a configuration with the different OEM vendors, and they are certified for one reason, which is providing you exactly the performance that we tested those systems for. So no bad surprises. Cool. So if there are no last minute questions, I would like to say thank you to Kim for being with us today. Okay, another question. Frat, you're surprising me. You don't want me to close the webinar. Thank you. So what networking gear you use? Okay, that's up to you. I mean, we can speak 25, 40 gigs, 100 gigs. We just require standard network switches, of course, enterprise switches. We work well with Cisco, Arista, Mellanox, whatever you want. We are agnostic in that sense. We love Mellanox for obvious reasons, but we play very well also with all the other vendors. All right, so I'm going to try again and see if we get another last minute question. Okay, so guys, thank you. Again, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for participating in this webinar. We appreciate your interest in our technology. Thank you again to Kim for being so kind today. And of course, you can contact us, and we have your emails. You will have to review the relevant part for you. So thank you again. It has been a pleasure, and I wish you a great rest of the day. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.